There are words that stop time, words that, the moment you hear them, the room goes quiet, your chest tightens, and something inside you just breaks. I don't love you anymore. Maybe it came after dinner. Maybe it came in the middle of an argument you thought was just like every other argument. Maybe it came quietly, almost gently, and that made it hurt even more. If you're watching this right now, there's a good chance those words are still ringing in your ears. And I want you to know something before we go any further. You are not alone. And this is not the end of your story. What you're feeling right now, that mixture of shock, panic, grief, and desperation, that is one of the most painful emotional experiences a human being can go through. The research calls it attachment injury. But you don't need a clinical term to know what it feels like. It feels like the ground disappeared beneath your feet. Here's what I want to offer you today. Not false hope, not a quick fix, but real, evidence-based steps, grounded in attachment science and the Gottman Method, that will help you move through this with clarity, with dignity, and with a genuine chance at healing. Whether that healing happens together or apart, you will get through this. And you can come out of it more secure, more self-aware, and more capable of love than you've ever been. Stay with me, because what comes next might change everything. Let's start with something that might surprise you. When your partner says, "I don't love you anymore," those words are almost never the whole truth. Did I know that sounds strange? Maybe even a little infuriating if you're sitting with the raw pain of having just heard them. But bear with me here, because understanding this one thing could be the most important shift you make in the next few weeks. I end couples therapy. When a partner says, "I don't love you anymore," what therapists almost always find beneath those words is not an absence of love. It's an accumulation of pain that has never been fully expressed. It's years, sometimes decades, of small moments where one person reached for connection and found nothing. Or worse, felt criticized, dismissed, or unseen. Dr. John Gottman, who has spent over 40 years studying couples in his love lab at the University of Washington, describes something he calls emotional bids. Every single day, we make bids for our partner's attention, affection, and connection. A bid can be as simple as saying, "Look at this funny video," or sighing heavily after a long day. A bid is a reach. It's a quiet little request that says, "I need you. I want to feel close to you." When those bids are consistently ignored, rejected, or met with contempt, love doesn't die all at once. It erodes, slowly, quietly, like water wearing down stone. When your partner finally says those words, "I don't love you anymore," what they are often really saying is, "I've been hurting for a long time, and I don't know how to reach you anymore. I've run out of ways to try." That doesn't make the words less devastating, but it does mean that this moment, as painful as it is, may not be an ending. It may be the first honest conversation your relationship has had in years, and that is where we begin. Step 1, regulate first. Respond later. That I need you to hear this clearly, because it may be the single most important thing I say in this entire video. Do not respond to an emotional crisis with an emotional reaction. That I know how hard that is. When someone you love, someone you have built your life with, looks at you and says they don't love you anymore, every instinct in your nervous system fires at once. You want to argue. You want to cry and beg. You want to grab their hands and make them remember every beautiful thing you've shared. You want to say, "How could you do this to me?" Or, "You don't mean that," or, "What about the kids? What about our life? What about everything?" And underneath all of that, you just want them to take it back. That impulse, that desperation, it comes from one of the most ancient parts of your brain. Psychologists call it the attachment panic response. When we perceive that our primary attachment figure, the person we rely on for emotional safety, is withdrawing or leaving, our nervous system sounds the alarm. Fight, freeze, flee, or cling. For most people in a moment like this, the response is to cling, to pursue, to escalate. And here is the painful truth that attachment science has confirmed over and over again. Pursuing, escalating, and clinging in. A moment of emotional shutdown almost always pushes your partner further away, not because they don't care, but because they are also dysregulated. They are also overwhelmed. And when two dysregulated nervous systems collide in a moment of crisis, the result is rarely connection. It is almost always more damage. What do you do instead? You pause. You breathe. You regulate. This is not the same as going numb. This is not the same as pretending you're okay. Regulating your nervous system means giving your brain enough space to move out of panic mode and into what researchers call the window of tolerance, that zone where you can actually think, feel, and respond with intention rather than reaction. Here are 3 things you can do in the immediate aftermath of hearing those words, whether it's tonight or tomorrow morning or right now as you're watching this. First, give yourself permission to step away. If the conversation is escalating and neither of you can speak without crying, yelling, or shutting down, it is okay to say, calmly, I need a little time to process this. Can we come back to this conversation in an hour? This is not running away. This is responsible emotional management. The Gottman research calls this a self-imposed timeout, and it is one of the healthiest things you can do in a moment of flooding. Second, do something physiological to calm your nervous system. Not scrolling your phone, not texting your best friend in a panic. Something that actually works with your body's stress response. Slow, deep breathing, specifically breathing out longer than you breathe in, activates the parasympathetic nervous system and tells your brain, the danger is not immediate. I can think clearly. Even 5 minutes of this can shift you from reactive to responsive. Third, write, don't speak. In those first raw hours, so much of what we want to say to our partner comes from pain, not wisdom. Write it down instead. Write everything you want to say, the anger, the grief, the confusion, the love. Get it out of your body and onto the page. You are not going to send this. You are not going to read it out loud. You are simply giving your emotional brain somewhere to put everything so that your thinking brain can come back online. None of this is weakness. All of it is strength, because the couples who survive a moment like this, who actually come out on the other side with something worth saving, they are not the ones who fought the hardest in the worst moment. They are the ones who had the courage to slow down when every instinct told them to panic. Step 2. Understanding the roots. What is actually happening beneath I don't love you anymore once you've had a chance to breathe? Once the initial shock has settled just enough for you to think, the next step is to get curious rather than defensive. This is genuinely one of the hardest things I will ask of you in this video. Because when we are hurting, curiosity feels almost impossible. Our brain wants answers that confirm our fear. They never really loved me, or our anger. This is completely unfair. What our brain does not naturally want to do in a moment of pain is get genuinely curious about another person's inner world. But this is exactly what the research says matters most, Dr. Sue Johnson, the founder of Emotionally Focused Therapy, one of the most evidence-based approaches to couples work that we have, describes love relationships as attachment bonds. And she says that when those bonds feel threatened, we don't express our pain directly. We express it through what she calls secondary emotions: anger, withdrawal, criticism, contempt, because those feel safer than the raw vulnerability of saying, I am scared. I need you. I don't know if you're really there for me, Dennis O. When your partner says, I don't love you anymore, what might be underneath that? Let's look at some of the most common roots, because understanding these won't just help you make sense of this moment. It will help you respond in a way that actually opens a door instead of closing one. Attachment wounds. In attachment theory, an attachment wound is a moment or a series of moments where one partner needed the other and the other was not there. Not absent in a malicious way, but absent in the way that life sometimes makes us absent. Distracted, stressed, emotionally unavailable, too caught up in our own survival to notice that our partner was quietly drowning. These wounds accumulate. And here's what makes them so dangerous. The person carrying them often doesn't even fully realize how deep they go until something, a fight, a disappointment, an anniversary that passes without acknowledgement, breaks open the surface and everything floods out at once. Emotional burnout. Relationship burnout is real, and it is profoundly underdiagnosed. It looks like exhaustion, yes, but it's not just tiredness. It's the specific exhaustion that comes from trying to connect, trying to be heard, trying to feel close, and consistently feeling like you're trying alone. When one partner has been carrying the emotional weight of the relationship, initiating difficult conversations, managing the emotional temperature of the home, reaching for intimacy that never quite arrives, they eventually hit a wall. And from the outside, that wall looks like withdrawal. It looks like coldness. It can even look like falling out of love. But it's not. It's collapse from exhaustion, Resentment that was never processed. Gottman describes resentment as the slow poison of relationships. It builds when we feel wronged, dismissed, or taken for granted, and we don't express it. Not because we don't feel it, but because we don't know how to express it without starting a fight, or because every time we've tried in the past, it's led to something worse. So we swallow it, and we swallow it, and we swallow it, until one day, there is simply no room left for love, because resentment has filled every inch of the space that love used to occupy. Identity loss and personal disconnection. This one is less talked about, but it is increasingly common, especially in long-term partnerships and marriages. Over time, many people lose touch with who they are outside of their relationship. They stop pursuing their own interests, friendships, and dreams. They become a spouse, a parent, a partner, but they stop being themselves. And when that happens, something dies. Not the love, necessarily, but the aliveness that love needs to survive. When your partner says, "I don't love you anymore," sometimes what they are really saying is, "I don't recognize myself anymore." And I'm blaming us, blaming this relationship, for who I've become. Understanding which of these roots is at play in your specific situation will not happen in one conversation. It will take time, honesty, and probably the help of a skilled couples therapist. But simply knowing that these roots exist, that "I don't love you anymore" almost always has a history, a context, a cause that predates this moment by months or years. That knowledge alone can help you approach what comes next with something other than panic. That IT can help you approach it with compassion, not just for your partner, but for yourself. Because you, too, are a person who has been living inside a relationship that has been quietly struggling. You, too, may have needs that went unmet. Moments where you reached and weren't held. Times when you were more defended than open, more reactive than present. This is not about blame. This is about understanding. And understanding is where healing begins. Step 3. Creating a safe space for real dialogue here is what most couples do after a moment like this one. They either fight loudly, desperately, painfully, trying to argue their way back to love, or they go completely silent, retreating into separate rooms, separate silences, a cold distance that feels safer than the risk of another wound. Neither of these moves the relationship forward. Both of them deepen the disconnection. What the research actually supports and what skilled therapists work toward is something different, something harder, and something far more powerful. It's called a safe conversation. A safe conversation is not a debate. It is not a negotiation. It is not an opportunity to make your case or defend your record as a partner. A safe conversation is a space where both people can speak their truth, their real truth, the tender underneath the anger truth, and feel genuinely heard. Gottman's research identified what he calls the 4 horsemen of relationship breakdown: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. These 4 communication patterns, when present consistently, predict divorce with over 90% accuracy. And in a moment of crisis, like the one you're in right now, all 4 of these patterns are at their most tempting and their most dangerous. How do you create safety when you are in pain? Start with a request, not a demand. Instead of, "We need to talk right now," which activates your partner's defenses, try something softer. "I know this has been really hard for both of us. I'd like to understand more about what you're feeling. Is there a time in the next day or 2 where we could talk, really talk without distractions?" This kind of approach signals that you are not coming to fight. You are coming to listen. Use I language, not you language. This is foundational Gottman methodology, and it works because it keeps the conversation focused on your inner experience rather than on accusations about your partner's behavior. "I feel scared" lands very differently than "you scared me." "I've been feeling disconnected" is far less threatening than "you've been pulling away." The goal is to open a door, not to throw something through it. Acknowledge their experience before defending your own. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive piece of advice I can give you right now, and it is also the most important. Before you explain yourself, before you share your own pain, before you offer your perspective on what went wrong, first, try to reflect back what your partner has expressed. It sounds like you've been feeling really alone in this relationship for a long time. Is that right? This one move, genuine, non-defensive acknowledgement, can sometimes shift the entire emotional temperature of a conversation in a matter of minutes, because what your partner needs to know, more than anything else in this moment, is that they are not invisible to you. That their experience, their pain, their exhaustion, their disconnection is real to you. You don't have to agree with everything they've said. You don't have to accept a version of events that feels unfair. But you do need to be able to say, honestly, I see you. I hear you. What you're feeling matters to me. That is the foundation of safety. And without safety, no real conversation, no real healing is possible. Step 4. Work on yourself first. The path to secure behaviors, I want to pause here and say something that might feel uncomfortable. No matter what happens with your relationship, whether you and your partner find your way back to each other, or whether you ultimately walk different paths, the most important work you can do right now is the work you do on yourself. Not to fix yourself so your partner will love you again. That framing is actually part of the problem, but because you deserve to understand yourself more deeply. Because your patterns, your ways of attaching, reacting, withdrawing, pursuing, they didn't appear out of nowhere. They were learned. They were shaped by every relationship you've ever had, going all the way back to your earliest experiences of love and safety and belonging. And they can be changed. That is one of the most hopeful findings in all of attachment science. The brain remains plastic. The patterns we developed in childhood or in previous relationships can be updated. We are not permanently fixed in our anxious or avoidant or disorganized ways of attaching. We can learn, with intention and practice, to become more secure. This process is called earned security. And it begins not with your partner. It begins with you. Here's what working on yourself looks like in practical terms, especially in the aftermath of a relationship crisis. Self-soothing is not selfishness. It is survival. When your nervous system is in chronic stress, as it is right now, your capacity for empathy, patience, and clear thinking is dramatically reduced. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Self-soothing practices are not luxuries. They are the foundation of your ability to show up differently in your relationship. This might look like daily movement, time in nature, journaling, meditation, therapy, or simply protecting 8 hours of sleep. Whatever helps your nervous system downregulate, do more of it. Intentionally. Consistently. Identify your attachment style and get honest about how it shows up. Are you someone who tends to pursue when your partner withdraws? Texting repeatedly, escalating emotionally, becoming more desperate the more distant they seem? That's an anxious attachment pattern. Are you someone who tends to shut down, go cold, or become logical and detached when your partner is emotional? That's avoidant attachment. Neither of these patterns is a character flaw. Both of them are adaptations, strategies your nervous system developed to survive earlier experiences of love that felt unsafe or unreliable. But in a relationship crisis, these patterns play out like a script that neither of you wrote, and both of you are trapped in. The pursuer pursues harder. The withdrawer withdraws further. And the distance between you grows. Recognizing your pattern is the first step to changing it. Practice secure behaviors, even when they feel unnatural. Secure attachment is not a personality trait that some people have and others don't. It is a set of behaviors that can be learned and practiced. Secure behaviors include asking for what you need directly, rather than hinting, hoping, or demanding, tolerating discomfort without either pursuing anxiously or withdrawing defensively, expressing vulnerability without collapsing, and trusting that the relationship can hold difficulty without falling apart. These behaviors will feel uncomfortable at first, especially if your nervous system has been in panic mode. Do them anyway. The feeling of security follows the behavior of security, not the other way around. Seek individual therapy, not just couples therapy. This is a recommendation I make with great care because I know it's not accessible to everyone. But if you have any means of accessing individual therapy right now, please do. Not because something is wrong with you, but because having a skilled, neutral professional help you process what you're going through, the shock, the grief, the fear, the anger, the questions about who you are and what you want, is one of the most powerful investments you can make in yourself and in the possibility of your relationship. Working on yourself in this way is not giving up on your partner. It is giving your relationship the best possible chance. Because the version of you that emerges from genuine self-work, more self-aware, more regulated, more securely anchored in your own sense of worth, That version of you is a far better partner. That version of you is someone your partner might actually be able to fall back toward. Step 5. Making the decision. Heal together or create healthy space. This is the conversation that no one wants to have. But it is one of the most loving and honest conversations two people can offer each other after a crisis like this one. At some point, not tonight, not necessarily this week, but at some point you and your partner will need to make a shared decision about what comes next. And here is what I need you to understand. This decision cannot be made well in the heat of crisis. It cannot be made when both of you are flooded, exhausted, and operating from your most defended selves. It needs to be made from a place of relative calm, genuine honesty, and mutual respect. There are essentially two paths forward. Path 1. Choosing to heal together. Both partners agree that the relationship is worth fighting for, not out of fear or obligation, but out of genuine desire to repair and rebuild. This path requires commitment to couples therapy, radical honesty about what has gone wrong, a willingness to be changed by what you learn about each other, and the patience to understand that rebuilding trust and intimacy is not a quick process. It is a slow, sometimes painful, often beautiful process. And it is possible. The research is very clear on this. Couples who commit to structured therapeutic work, especially using evidence-based approaches like emotionally focused therapy or the Gottman Method, have very high rates of not just surviving crises like this one, but thriving in deeper, more honest relationships than they had before. Path 2. Creating healthy space. Sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts and deepest intentions, two people are not able to find their way back to each other. And when that is the truth, the honest, painful, real truth, the most loving thing two people can do is to acknowledge it with dignity and care. This is not failure. Let me say that again because I want it to land. Choosing to separate, when both people have genuinely tried and the relationship truly cannot be repaired, is not failure. It is an act of enormous courage and self-awareness. It is choosing honesty over performance. It is choosing your own wholeness and your partner's over the appearance of a relationship that exists in name only. If this is where you are or where you are heading, I want you to know there is a way to do this that honors the love you once had. There is a way to separate that does not destroy either person. It requires the same tools. Communication, regulation, compassion, support, but aimed at a different outcome. And whatever path you choose, together or apart, your healing does not end here. It continues. In therapy, in community, in the quiet work you do on yourself in the months and years ahead. The long game. Tools for rebuilding love if you both still want it, if you and your partner have decided or are leaning toward deciding that you want to try to rebuild. I want to give you something concrete to work with. Because hope without tools is just wishful thinking. And you deserve more than that. Here are the evidence-based tools that couples therapists use most consistently to help partners rebuild after a significant rupture. The Gottman State of the Union meeting. This is a structured weekly check-in that Gottman recommends for all couples, but it is especially powerful during recovery from a crisis. Once a week, you and your partner sit down for approximately 30 to 60 minutes and take turns sharing what has felt good this week, what has been hard, and one thing you'd like to ask of each other in the week ahead. The structure matters. It creates a container, a regular, intentional space for honesty that doesn't have to bleed into every other moment of your shared life. The turning toward practice. Remember those emotional bids we talked about earlier? The research is clear. Couples who consistently turn toward each other's bids, who notice them, acknowledge them, and respond to them, build what Gottman calls an emotional bank account that can weather enormous difficulties. Turning toward doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as putting down your phone when your partner starts talking, looking up from your laptop, laughing at their joke even when you're tired. These small moments of responsiveness accumulate into something profound over time. Repair attempts. Gottman's research found that the difference between couples who stay together and couples who don't is not whether they have conflict. All couples have conflict. The difference is whether they can repair after conflict. A repair attempt is anything one partner does to de-escalate tension. A touch on the arm, a small joke, a simple, "I'm sorry, I got too heated." What matters is not the elegance of the attempt, but the willingness to make it, and the willingness of the other partner to receive it. Vulnerability practice. One of the deepest longings in any intimate relationship is to be truly known, not just the competent, capable, put-together version of yourself, but the scared part, the lonely part, the part that still carries wounds from a long time ago. When couples practice sharing this level of vulnerability in a space that has been made safe enough to hold it, something remarkable often happens. The distance closes, the defended postures soften, and love, real love, not the performance of love, but the actual living thing, has room to breathe again. Professional support. I cannot stress this enough. If you are serious about rebuilding, please find a therapist who is trained in either emotionally focused therapy or the Gottman Method. These are not generic talk therapy approaches. They are structured, evidence-based protocols specifically designed for couples in distress. They have been studied extensively. They work. You do not have to figure this out alone. You were never meant to that. We have covered a lot of ground today. And I want to take just a moment before we close to acknowledge something important. If you made it to this point in the video, you're not someone who gives up easily. You are someone who is fighting for your relationship, for yourself, for something you believe in. And that matters. Let me remind you of what we walked through together. We talked about how "I don't love you anymore" is almost never the whole story. That behind those words is almost always a long history of unspoken pain, unmet needs, and attachment wounds that never fully healed. We talked about the critical importance of regulating your own nervous system before responding, of pausing, breathing, and choosing response over reaction. We explored the deep roots of relational disconnection, attachment wounds, emotional burnout, resentment, and identity loss. We talked about how to create a safe space for real dialogue, one built on curiosity, language, and genuine acknowledgement of your partner's experience. We looked at the essential work of self-growth, identifying your attachment patterns, practicing secure behaviors, and seeking individual support. We discussed the two paths forward, healing together or creating space with dignity, and why both can be expressions of love and courage. And we explored the concrete tools for rebuilding state of the union meetings, turning toward, repair attempts, vulnerability, and professional guidance. Wherever you are in this journey right now, whether you are in the raw first hours of the shock, or whether you have been sitting with this pain for weeks, I want you to hold on to this. You are not defined by this moment. You are not defined by what your partner said, or by what your relationship has become, or by the fear of what might come next. You are someone who is capable of healing, of growing, of becoming more secure, more self-aware, and more genuinely loving than you have ever been. Not despite this pain, but because of what you are willing to do with it. That journey begins today, and it begins with you. If this video reached you in a meaningful way, I'd love for you to leave a comment below. Tell me, which of these 5 steps feels most important for where you are right now? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if you know someone who is walking through this kind of pain right now, please share this video with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone we love is simply say, "Here, I found something that might help." Subscribe to Secure Love Psychology for new videos every week, because building a secure, lasting love is not a destination. It is a practice. And you don't have to practice it alone. I'll see you in the next one. Take good care of yourself. You deserve it.